for some people, it might even be evening or nighttime. So a very special word of welcome on behalf of the Gandhi Development Trust, led by Ila Gandhi and the Ambedkar Foundation here in Johannesburg. We at the outset would like to, on behalf of all the people who are on the program and who might be, listening and viewing this in different parts of the world, we want to express our deepest and very sincerest condolences to the family, to the friends, to the comrades of the late E.S. Reddy. He was a dear friend to many of us in many different ways. I mean, from the bits that we've heard, so many people have been touched by, by his kindness, his scholarship, his work in the diplomatic community, etc. So we have an array of people here, friends, family members, scholars, academics, politicians, diplomats, all the excellencies, you are welcome. And thank you very much for joining in for this virtual memorial service of a very, very dear friend, as I've said. Mr. E.S. Reddy was born on the 1st of July, 1924. And as we all know, at the beginning of this month, on the 1st of November, he left us. He left us without saying goodbye. And we really, would have paid tribute to him, or we should have paid tribute to him in his lifetime. But in the many years that he was here, in different ways, people have celebrated his achievements and have expressed their appreciation and gratitude. But from our side, this is a very special moment for us to be able to speak at least to his family, to his extended family throughout the world. He was really a global figure and a citizen of the world. So I'm not going to be saying too much about Mr. Reddy because we've got a wonderful list of speakers from different parts of the world. But and a number of people have published obituaries in different platforms over the past few weeks. But we remember Mr. Reddy as a diplomat, as a scholar, as a historian, as a librarian, as an archivist, as a peacenik, as a guardian, a Ghanaian, a husband, a father, and a gentleman all in one. Nobody can miss his softness and his tenderness of his temperament. And for us in South Africa, he's been a tremendous friend, a great friend of the South African liberation movement, not just of the African National Congress, but the entire liberation movement. And we remember him as a giant in the global anti-apartheid movement. He was one of the most important and most prominent people in the world anti-apartheid movement. And for us, certainly when he was at the UN, he was a guiding star. And Mr. Gandhi was able to put into practical effect for over 70 years the concept of international solidarity. We have moments where we express solidarity with different communities, different struggles throughout the world. But here was a man, I mean, who spent his entire life in this work of anti-apartheid activism and solidarity with the people of South Africa, of Africa and the developing world. We have an impressive lineup of speakers. They are family members, diplomats or former diplomats, politicians and activists, scholars, academics and historians, and friends of the late E.S. Reddy. We've ensured that although we have a long list and we've got about 10 speakers, but don't be don't be intimidated by that. We've ensured that every speaker will speak from between 6 to 8 minutes. It will not be longer than that. And we are very determined that this program will end within 1.5 hours. So without much ado, let me then just again extend a very warm welcome to anybody who has joined us more recently and missed a bit of the introduction. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to intervene and introduce every speaker at a time because it breaks the continuity. So we will start off with a very short video of Mr. E.S. Reddy receiving an award a few years ago in South Africa. There's a beautiful clip of about 5 or 6 minutes in which there's an expression of praise for his work. And then thereafter, I will introduce immediately now. I will introduce 3 other speakers, and then the people who are managing the program will put on the various pre-recorded video messages. So after the video presentation, the first speaker will be Dr. Vijay Chandru, He's part of the family, the Reddy family, and he's also the co-founder and chairman of Strand Life Sciences. Thereafter, we will have two very, very dear friends of the late Mr. Reddy, the members of the Sisulu family, the family of Walter and Albertina Sisulu. They knew him for many years, they looked up to him, and he had supported that great veteran and stalwart of our struggle, Sir Eleanor and Max Sisulu. Eleanor is a writer, a historian, and an activist, and Max Sisulu, as some people might know, was the former Speaker of our national parliament. And then thereafter, we will have Professor Dr. Gopal Krishna Gandhi, again, a great friend of South African people, and also of Mr. Reddy, a former High Commissioner to South Africa and a former governor of West Bengal. So that will be the lineup of the first three speakers. These will flow. I mean, the program people who are managing the IT will load them on one after the other. And then after that, I'll introduce the next three speakers. So I want to now hand over to the technical people. Dawood and Delani, if you can, put on the video message, please. Thank you very much.
I had felt that it was my duty, the duty of the Indian freedom movement, to support the struggle against South Africa. And it so happened that when I got a job in the United Nations, my first job had to deal with South Africa. I used to tell Oliver Tambo, you should have a representative in New York. He said, no, we don't need a representative in New York so long as you're there. But I had to tell him, no, we had to have a representative. Joining the struggle against racism in South Africa was a passion. It's very much part of our personality. When people say, where did you learn about apartheid and struggle against apartheid? I would say it is with my mother's milk, in a sense, that's the expression. From my birth, in a sense, from the time I was involved in politics, I had faith that colonialism will end, racism will end, and so on. Was there any rational reason? I don't know. But we had faith. That was what carried us along in India for decades of struggle for freedom. When Mandela walked out of the prison, I was sure that apartheid is finished.
Enuga Reddy was an activist against apartheid long before he joined the United Nations Secretariat in 1949. I made frequent visits to the UN headquarters in New York to brief him about social and sporting issues in South Africa, but there was very little he did not know. On Enuga's suggestion, the UN Special Committee Against Apartheid initiated in 1990 the Register of Sports Contacts with South Africa. The register, known the world over as the Blacklist, persuaded many governments and sports organizations to bar apartheid collaborators from entering their respective countries. His interest, dedication, and commitment in ensuring the demise of apartheid was so intense that it always made us wonder whether he was an Indian national or a South African living in exile. I've had the privilege and honor to work closely with Enuga Reddy since the early 1960s, when President Oliver Tambo asked me to do so. He remained an absolutely steadfast supporter of the African liberation struggle and helped to coordinate the efforts of governments and people's movements against apartheid via the United Nations, forging us all into a powerful worldwide force that ultimately helped to overturn the apartheid system. No sacrifice was too great for Enuga Reddy, as he worked with passion and deep commitment through every waking moment. We welcome and honor him in South Africa again as a great hero of our liberation struggle.
Well, it's a great honor to be present here tonight together with E.S. Reddy. It's wonderful to remember the contribution of E.S. Reddy to the struggle. Not only because he is a walking encyclopedia of knowledge about South Africa and other countries, about the South African struggle, but he is a unique source of material and an inspiration for his role in the struggle. One can never forget E.S. Reddy's role at the United Nations, when he kept the struggle and the oppression of the people of South Africa in the forefront. So he has got a tremendous history which still has to be recorded, but his contribution should never ever be forgotten for his unique role, solidarity role with the people of South Africa. And now he continues with the work that he had done. And again, he has to be congratulated for that.
Ghettos of the colors, don't forget the human core. In the townships of humanity, there would be no poor. From when the rock is heavy, comes the purest ore. The first 6 waves might break in the bay, but the 7th breaks on the shore. So long one to freedom. It's a long one to freedom.
My father-in-law, Sitaram Reddy, who is 90 years old, and the only surviving sibling of Enuga Srinivasulu Reddy, my wife Uma, her siblings, and I, as well as other members of our extended family, were deeply saddened at hearing of the passing on of Srinivas Mama, who was a very gentle, kind, generous, and much loved and respected patriarch of our family. Referred to as Srinivas Anna by his younger siblings, he was the second child with an older brother Narahari, younger sister Sita Ratnamma, and 3 younger brothers Sita Rama, Janardana, and Padmanabha. Sitaram Mama recalls with gratitude that as a young boy, his Srinivas Anna taught him English and admitted him in school. Another vivid memory he has is his brother Srinivas trooping off to the Dalit colony half a mile away from their home in Gudur as a young lad with a hurricane lamp to conduct classes for children in the colony. Their father, Enuga Venkatnasa Reddy, who was a mica mining company executive in Guru, was also a freedom fighter who, following the advice of Gandhiji, built a hostel that housed and fed 50 Dalit boys. He was arrested during a march and imprisoned for 3 months in Vellore and Bellary. His wife Ramamma became ill when he was in jail and sadly passed away soon after, when Srinivaslu was 18 and the youngest, Padmanabha, was 3. Like many wealthy women of that time, she too had donated all her jewelry to the independence movement when Gandhiji came to Andhra Pradesh. Srinivaslu's strong commitment to public education in the region continued in later years. He contributed to the science, laboratory equipment, and infrastructure of the school built by his father in Manubolu, which was approximately 8 kilometers from Gudu. He also donated scientific lab equipment and books to a school built by his younger brother Sitaram in his wife's village. Sitaram recalls that at age 16, Srinivaslu joined a BA honors degree course in mathematics at the Jesuit-run Loyola College in Madras. And for leading a student protest, was expelled from Loyola. He was able to complete his BA mathematics at the Madras Christian College, where he had previously done his intermediate qualification, and the principal was fond of him. He had many progressive friends at college. After completing his undergraduate degree in 1943, Srinivas Reddy lived in Nellore and became engaged in progressive activities until he obtained admission for higher studies and left on a ship for America with a Watermal Foundation scholarship. While in Nellore, he learned the Burrakatha folk storytelling form, popularized by Sheikh Nazar in Guntur and adopted by the progressive movement in Andhra. He chose to spend his monthly stipend on books and on one occasion took a bus to Alluru to attend a meeting. He had just 5.5 annas to travel one way on the bus and had to walk back 20 miles to Nellore. Among his many friends were Neelam Rajashekara Reddy, the brother of a future president of India, and T. Pattabhiram Reddy, who went on to become a celebrated poet and a filmmaker of progressive causes. Uma and I were fortunate to have spent a fair amount of time with her Srinivas Pednaina and Aunt Neeli when we lived in Cambridge and visited them often later. In one of my recent visits, Srinivas Mama handed me a stack of papers with a suggestion that it was material for a play. This remains a project that I hope to complete in his memory. As the patriarch of the Enuga family, Srinivas Reddy was looked up to and loved by a large extended family, which is bereaved by his passing. We are sure that our children, grandchildren, and future generations of our family will remain enriched and inspired by his work, writings, and memories, like we are. His brother, Enuga Sitaram Reddy, is touched by the wonderful tributes that have been published by many in attendance here. On his behalf and on behalf of the extended family in India, I would like to thank all of you for your tributes, and particularly Ella and friends at the Gandhi Development Trust and the Ahmed Katrada Foundation for organizing this online memorial service. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all, on this auspicious occasion. It's a great honor to be able to say a few words to commemorate the great life of Enugu Reddy. For us as the Sisulu family, he was really an important person. I personally used his work a lot when I was writing the biography of Walter and Albertina Sisulu. And I also really got to first know him or know of him when he wrote the beautiful article when Walter Sisulu turned 70 years old. And we were in Lusaka at the time, I think. And it was such a wonderful article. And I remember my shock years later when I realized that he actually wasn't a South African and that he knew so much about South African history and just wrote not only with knowledge but with love as well. When he received the companion of O.R. Tambo, it was wonderful to be in touch with him, and we were very, very happy that he was accorded this honor. And we met with Leila when she came to receive the award on his behalf. We were struck by what a wonderful memory he had and just such clarity right to the end. I was deeply honored to get a message from him, an email from him shortly after Dennis Goldberg died. We were in touch with Gopal Gandhi, and Gopal gave him my email, and he reminded me of when we had met and also of the article that he wrote about Max in 1963 for the UN Special Committee of Apartheid report when Max was detained, was the first detainee, was the youngest detainee to be imprisoned under the 90 Days Act. So his knowledge of South African history was encyclopedic, but also his just love and attachment for the people he wrote about. And we really offer condolences to his family. We remember his niece Leila. We had a wonderful evening reminiscing with her when she was Consul General in Durban, talking about her uncle and his love for South Africa. And I remember at that time, that I think that was when I realized that Enugu Reddy wasn't a South African. And so his contribution will be deeply, deeply appreciated, and we hope that we'll be able to continue his legacy by making sure that future generations of South Africans recognize his work. So projects such as South Africa History Online and all our efforts to make sure that the next generation understands and knows our history, and his is certainly one of the names that must feature largely. I'll hand over to my husband.
It's a great honor to say a few words about Enugu. For a long time, I thought he was a South African. And actually, he told everybody that he's also a South African in part. He was very close to our father, Walter, and great friends. But also for me, he was not just my father's friend, but he was also a good person and was able to help me with so many things, my studies. And if I had any questions, Dad would send me to him to go and ask him. He knows a lot about everything, Dad used to say. And so we had a very close relationship, family relationship. But also we learned as young kids a lot from him, because he told us about a country that we only read about in geography and history. But he also told it as a person who knows the country very well, and that is India. We happy to have been associated with a person like him. He and my father, Walter, and Mama, Albertina, were very close friends. He was part of our family, part of the family in every word and deed. And he would come at home in Soweto, unafraid that, there was a story going around that Soweto is a very dangerous place for foreigners, but certainly not for him. he felt at home in Soweto, as we all did. So it's a great pleasure to be able to say a few words about him, to thank him for all that he has done for my father, for my mother, and most important, for the struggle of our people. We as a nation are free today thanks to support of many people the world over, including Reddy. We hope that as time goes on, his history will be written down so that future generations will know about the role many people played in our struggle and also in our victory. Thank you.
It is an honor to join my friends in remembering Enuga Srinivasulu Reddy. Everyone who knew ES, as I called him, felt and felt correctly that she or he knew him better than anyone can know anyone. In other words, those who knew ES felt they had a very unique and original bond with him. This was amazingly true. He had the gift of knowing a very large number of people, but getting to know them in a way that was very individual, very directly personal to that person. This amazes me because it indicates a range of receptivity in him, which is not only uncommon, but in fact, in my experience and my knowledge, unprecedented. He had mental space and intellectual space and emotional space and historical space for everyone he got to know. He was extensive in his range, not just because his interests were wide, but because his temperament was what it was. Regardless of class, regardless of occupation of the person concerned, regardless of the mutuality of their interests, once he decided to get to know a person, he got to know that person and got to know that person's family. Amazing how everyone whom ES knew was not just a person, but a member of a family and member of a certain cultural setting. And he got to know all of them. The Naidu family in South Africa, for instance, was known to him jointly as the Naidu family, but also individually, severally. He knew all the brothers and all the sisters and their spouses. And he had an independent equation with each of them. It was independent of each of them. It was also mutual because he linked them. But whether it was one or the other, it was distinct. What did this mean in terms of E.S. Reddy's understanding of the human condition? It meant basically this, that we are all products of our circumstances. Even we fail, we are products of our circumstances. When we succeed, we are the result of the success of our environment, the situation around us which is conducive to success. Enuga Reddy understood human history, human politics, because he understood human beings. And he understood them not with a short-term objective of understanding situations. He did not get to know South Africans because he wanted to understand the politics of South Africa. He understood the politics of South Africa because he knew those people. And he got to know those people because he wanted to know people and because his work was with people. I have an incredible number of letters from Enugu Reddy over the last 35 years, which deal with situations and persons in a way in which I could not have ever anticipated an exchange of letters to deal. Enugu Reddy requires a biographer. He was a biographer, but he requires a biographer because his biography will be the biography of our times, of the 2 centuries which he encompassed. I do not know who can do justice to him, who can do justice to his life, but it needs to be done. Because to unlock E.S. Reddy's life is to unlock the history of our times. E.S. Reddy will live through his correspondence. He will live through his writings and his conversations as have been recorded by those who chose to put down those conversations in reminiscences and in return letters to him. I do not know if he intended to write his memoirs. If he did, he just didn't have the time to do so, because for him, his life had never come to a pause. It never stilled in a way in which he could have said, my time is over, and now I will recollect. He lived in the present. For him, time was the present continuous. I cannot think of him as a person who has gone, for he was the most alive person I have known, alive in the lives of everyone he met, in the lives of everyone he connected with, and connected those people with other people. I hope this particular recollection of E.S. will be the beginning of a larger project of universities and archives to put together his papers in a way in which history will be helped to look at itself through the mirrors of a dispassionate and yet warm human being. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the 3 speakers. I think there have been some really moving anecdotes and very human experiences, nothing sort of broadly philosophical, etc. So thank you very much for those wonderful tributes. We're going to quickly introduce 3 more speakers. The first of the 3 will be Professor Venu Madhav Govindu, who is an engineer by profession and a political researcher, and then a former diplomat and member of the family, Lata Reddy, who was also the first Consul General of the Government of India in Durban a few years ago. And that will be followed by Professor Tridip Surut, who is a writer, a historian, and a political scientist. And then once we've completed with those, we'll introduce the next set of speakers. Delani or Dawood?
First of all, I'm thankful for the opportunity to join all of you in paying tribute to the extraordinary life of Mr. E.S. Reddy. I am one of a very large network of or community of individuals scattered across the world who have benefited from, who have firstly had the privilege of knowing him, but also benefited from his help and advice in so many ways. Also, when you know someone like Mr. Reddy, you would notice that soft-spoken as he was, he was very much focused on the issues that he deemed to be important and was not very concerned about talking about. He was not very interested in talking about himself, right? And so to appreciate what he actually had managed to do in his long and highly significant life, to get a true measure of that, you would actually have to step away from a direct engagement with him and start looking at what he had actually done. And now there are others who are much more well placed to speak about the importance of what he had done with regard to his contributions to the struggle against apartheid in South Africa, but also many other similar causes scattered around the region. But I find certain aspects of his engagement with the South African question rather remarkable. Now, it is not unusual for a young person, at the age of 22, to be able to join a protest like Mr. Reddy did in 1946 in New York. But it is altogether unusual for him to be then able to carry forth that commitment, and mind you, that's a commitment that he's making to himself, right, at that point, to carry that commitment forward for a very, very long period of time in a very systematic and, a systematic fashion. And the other aspect of it, which I think is worth noting, and, in the Indian freedom struggle itself actually has had we have seen that in India in the 20s and 30s and 40s, and which is the fact that there were not too many of them, but there were a significant number of Britons, like people like C.F. Andrews or Reginald Reynolds, Agatha Harrison, Muriel Lester, Mirabean or Madeline Slade. These are all individuals who came from Britain but went against the grain of thinking in their own society to champion the cause of Indian independence. And one finds, I think I would like to think of Mr. Reddy in that particular lineage as someone who actually looked beyond the confines of his own society and owned a cause that, an important cause as his own. And so, in a tribute that is to appear soon, I call him India's gift to the struggle against apartheid. Now, of course, there is also the other aspect of his life, which is his contributions to our understanding of Gandhi. There has been an enormous body of work in Gandhi's own lifetime and ever since in trying to understand and critique and critically evaluate what the Mahatma's life and legacy really means and what it meant in his lifetime, what it meant in his lifetime and ever since. And actually, I would place Mr. Reddy in a very amidst a very significant lineage of major chroniclers of Gandhi's life there, right? From the contributions of someone like Mahadev Desai as the first major chronicler of Gandhi's life. There's been a long illustrious lineage, and I would think Mr. Reddy belongs to that, and he's possibly the last in that particular series. There will be people who will continue to study Gandhi's life and understand it in various ways, but the kind of comprehensiveness and the kind of the ability to open up new terrain in understanding Gandhi's legacy is something that we owe to Mr. Reddy. Now, what does all of this mean for us at this point in our lives, at a time when many societies are sort of closing up and are becoming rather insular with regard to what the rest of the world means for them, and of course to also questions within each one of our own societies itself. Our historical understanding is very important because there's a lot of distortion of ideas and questions and values and issues that pertain to each individual society. I don't need to rehearse all of them here. And in that sense, I think one of the important legacies that he leaves behind and demands from all of us is the ability to step beyond the confines of our own communities and societies and look beyond and build bridges of friendship, cooperation, and solidarity, and most importantly, understanding. Once again, it's been a privilege to have known Mr. Reddy, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to join all of you in this memorial service.
My focus today will be on E.S. Reddy as a global diplomat. During his UN career from 1949 to 1985 and even beyond. The UN is a really difficult place to effect change, as I have found through my own experiences in multilateral diplomacy. UN officials or diplomats are often constrained by the attitude of member countries, which is what makes E.S. Reddy's achievements even more amazing. What he had was, as Sean McBride said, and I quote, "the talent, braveness, and dedication crucial to beat the systemic overt and covert opposition to the liberation of South Africa." Even in his early days at the UN, he was active in the Council on African Affairs. He began his career in 1949 as a researcher for the Middle East and Southern Africa. And from 1963 to 1984, he was truly the UN official in charge one way or the other against apartheid. While in the United Nations as early as 1946, there was a call against racial discrimination, really substantive work began in 1962 with the passing of the first major resolution condemning apartheid in South Africa. Behind this was obviously very huge groundwork and lobbying by E.S. Reddy. This resolution called on states to break off relations with South Africa, impose sanctions, and create the UN Special Committee against apartheid. Initially, the countries of the West were against this move, while Africa and Asia were, which is why I said that it took immense groundwork and lobbying by E.S. Reddy to make this come about. He then served as the principal secretary of the UN Special Committee Against Apartheid from 63 to 65, and as director of the Center Against Apartheid from 76 to 1983, and eventually retired as Assistant Secretary General, which rank he attained from 1983 to 1985. It was no doubt a frustrating process in many ways, but ultimately very rewarding, because he really saw his cause achieve its goal. Even the unwilling finally joined the campaign. But this called for great diplomatic skill. He was never offensive, but always patient, relentless, and firm. He used the UN itself and its mechanisms, high-profile events and individuals, NGOs, every platform available to advance the cause. Sympathetic governments were carefully cultivated, and the laggard nations pressurized to join the cause. Indian diplomats had the highest regard and were great admirers of E.S. Reddy's diplomacy. His networking and his strategic thinking were often remarked on to me by my senior colleagues. The UN is a very different forum to others to negotiate in. One naysayer or a small group of countries can upset months and years of careful negotiation. Some governments do indeed flex their muscle and are suspicious of UN official-led initiatives, and I'm sure E.S. Reddy had to face a considerable amount of this. But he combated all this, kept in the background, let the delegations make speeches and table resolutions that he wrote for them, This was a brilliant strategy because it made it seem that countries were pressing for change rather than the UN itself. He ensured that the issue was discussed not just at the UN General Assembly, but also in ECOSOC and in the Commission for Human Rights. Finally, if today all governments pay at least lip service to condemning racial discrimination and abrogating discriminatory legislation, it is in large part due to the effort of E.S. Reddy. Even after retirement and well into his 80s and 90s, he expressed grave concern about the new manifestations of racism that were surfacing due to migration, xenophobia, and even genocide in extreme cases. He continued his work as a senior fellow at the UN Institute for Training and Research and was trustee for International Aid and Defense Fund for Southern Africa. In his own words, the task of removing this injustice needed and still needs, and I quote again, perseverance and determination, building on past achievements, and developing new strategies if necessary. There must be a sense of urgency. He has been called, and rightly so, a gentle, self-deprecating, soft-spoken, intellectually humble humanist. But for me, he was also a skilled diplomat with a strategic, focused, and shrewd mind and excellent communication skills. I believe he has not been appreciated enough in his lifetime. It is our task now to ensure that his life's work and his message lives on. We will always remember him and we will always honor his memory. Thank you. Thank you.
E.S. For me was a distant presence. Distant in the way that I never had the good fortune of meeting him, but a presence nevertheless since mid-90s. The first time I encountered what E.S. was and what E.S. could actually do from long distance was in mid-90s. When as a young researcher, I entered the Sabarmati Ashram's archives, and I was told that it was really being restructured, reorganized, catalogued, because somebody called E.S. Reddy had a computer and a computer operator to create a modern database for this magnificent and a rare treasure that the Sabarmati Ashram had. And ever since, not just the ashram, but all of us, all those who are interested in the life of Gandhi or in the larger question of justice, equity, suffering, have been beneficiaries of the kind of interventions that ES would make from a distance, very gently, always non-obtrusively, but would provide a solution that would benefit not one, but to a large community of people. And that really, for me, has been the lasting impression that I've had of this 2-decade-long interaction with ES. When I say 2-decade-long interaction, it really was one way, in the sense that he always gave. There was nothing that we could give except our gratitude, sometimes our friendship, but largely our gratitude. He gifted us everything. He answered our questions, sought material out for us, provided us with directions, gave us hints in ever so gentle way that would change or shape either the mode of archiving or your own individual research. I can think of three very large, or four in fact, institutions in India who benefited from it. Reddy Memorial, National Archives, the National Gandhi Museum, and most of all, really the Sabarmati Ashram archives. It was one of the last major acts that he did was to send all his papers, both physical and in digital format, to us at the ashram, to archive them, to make them available for scholars from world over. And that would be an immeasurable contribution. I think in the story of Gandhi, ES's contribution has been of a great corrective. All of us, particularly those from us who come from Gujarat, have had a bias, and that bias persists despite the work that ES and his associates did, which was that in the South African story, really and this was something that even Gandhi contributed to, was the contribution of communities other than the Gujaratis, or the communities of people other than Gujarati-speaking people, was something that was neglected, or we did not pay enough attention to. I think ES brought home to us in very sharp way, even with the last work that he did with Kalpana, of the contribution that every community, every group had made to the Gandhi story, but also to the larger quest for freedom. So that contribution of a corrective, of a course correction, I think would remain a very significant contribution that ES made to our thinking, to our act of researching and writing. ES and I shared a particular fondness for this vanishing craft of writing footnotes. We took delight in exchanging footnotes. He always supplemented more information to the sparse thing that I would have written. And so this, the act of footnoting the history of Gandhi in South Africa and later in India is something that we both shared. With an awareness that in this great saga, that all that we could actually contribute were meaningful footnotes. And in that sense, ES became a kind of a pathfinder for a lot of us, me in particular, because but for him, one would not have been able to access the South African story in the way that we finally did. He also played a very important role in rescuing, and I'm using the word rescuing the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi from being permanently mauled. He was one of those people who worked along with Gopal Krishna Gandhi and others in restoring, in convincing the government of India that the revised edition of the collected works was not something that would stand the test of time or of scholarship and had to be declared null and void. And therefore, generations of Gandhi scholars, historians of modern India, or those working on South Africa, or on the larger question of freedom, would always remain grateful to ES and his colleagues. And that needs to be placed on record because those records of those small interventions which shape the course of scholarship are quite often forgotten. I'm particularly grateful to ES because before he passed, he entrusted me with 3 manuscripts. one which has been published, and two which I have to see them through publication. But in the great ES style, these are almost print ready. These are almost camera copies which can go to the printer any day. All that one needs to do is to follow the craft of ES and add a footnote here or there. And that way, I think ES's contribution in terms of Gandhi scholarship to make us aware of the South African question, and through these two unpublished works of the Gandhi's American connection with the great pacifist, lawyer, economist Richard Gregg, and this maverick individual called Billy Neela Nagini is something that we will always remember him by. One of my great regrets is that I never had the opportunity to meet him. I missed him during my last visit, and he had already moved residence from New York to Cambridge, and one could not see him. And this would remain a lasting lack in my life, because I know that all the other scholars who will speak today and who have written about him have had the great fortune of being physically embraced by him. And that is something that would remain a great lack. But I thank you very much for making this possible for me to share my tribute and my memories of E.S. Reddy. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the three speakers that have come on now. Our next speaker is going to be Anil Novia, who is a former consul at the Supreme Court of India. He's a writer and author. Somebody is on. Dawood, there's a voice coming on. Please mute the person. Yeah. So I was saying our next speaker is going to be Anil Novia, who is a former counsel at the Supreme Court of India, a writer and author of a book, The African Element in Gandhi. We are also trying to get a minister in the presidency in South Africa, Minister Jackson Mthembu. He was committed in a meeting up until a few minutes ago, and they said that he's trying to log on. So Dawood, please check the list of participants. If he is connected, then we can bring him on. If not, then please accept our apologies for that. And then we will ask Mina Reddy, as a representative of the family, to come in and say a few words, and just a words of appreciation, and also her own reflections on her dad and as a family member. And thereafter, we'll ask Ila Gandhi from the Gandhi Development Trust and the Phoenix Settlement Trust to pass a vote of thanks. So Dawood, if you can bring on Mr. Novia, and then please look out for Minister Jackson Mthembu. If he can come on, it'll be great. If not, then we'll have to pass.
Anil Nauria, and I'm based in New Delhi. I'm a lawyer, and I'm also interested in the history of freedom struggles, especially of India and freedom struggles in Africa and their interactions. I first came to know of Mr. E.S. Reddy when I found his book about a vision of a free South Africa. And it was about the leaders of the African freedom struggle, Gandhiji. It was about John Dubé and how Gandhiji's ideas evolved over time. And it also had information about Mahatma Gandhi's interactions with Dr. Yusuf Dadu, with Nana Sita, with Africans in South Africa. That's how it began. I found this book and I read it. I would occasionally read articles by him in a weekly journal, which still comes out. It is called Mainstream. I was searching something, and I went to a Danish Peace Academy site, where I found some material which E.S. Reddy had put up. So I sent a message to that site asking, I said, well, is this the same person who writes for Mainstream? So then I got a message a few days later from Mr. E.S. Reddy. That was his first message, in which he says, yes, I used to write in Mainstream, mainly on South Africa, as I had been head of the United Nations Center Against Apartheid for many years. And then he says that I have been compiling the correspondence of Gandhi with people from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, including missionaries in India. So that's how I came to know him. Some material he gave to the National Archives. I must have told you that I gave to the National Archives several papers relating to Gandhi and South Africa. I asked them to keep the material in a file in my name. They said they could not do that, as I was not a prominent person. So instead of donating them to the National Archives of India, I gave them to the Nehru Museum. But a few days ago, E.S. Reddy says, I found on the internet that there is a E.S. Reddy collection at the National Archives. How did I become a prominent person? When I visited South Africa for the first time in 2004, he helped me, guided me with advice on who to meet. It is because of him that I think I got a lot of attention even from our Indian High Commission in South Africa. I would suggest you see Kader Asmal. About Zak Yaqub, he said, now Justice, blind from childhood, who sees better than me? Another person I thought you should see is Justice Albi Sachs of the Constitutional Court. About his contribution, it's well known. His writings are well known. He had done so much on the leaders of the African liberation movement. But apart from all that, he was busy with little things which were laborious and took a lot of time. For instance, he wrote about a register which was kept in the Ahmedabad ashram, the Sabarmati. It is maintained in the Sabarmati. I have an urge to work on South Africa and an urge to work on Gandhi. If I could make a final decision to drop one, I may be more productive. But that seemed impossible. This is that he created an index for Indian opinion about some recent writings on Gandhi. He made an interesting comment. This is not a book, but a campaign. He had also done a paper, a very comprehensive paper on Gandhi and the Chinese in South Africa. I should conclude by saying that his advice was keep searching. He says, I appreciate that you search as you find something which arouses your curiosity. I do the same. So I have a lot of odd bits of information, but not leading to my writings. That takes time, but is satisfying. And this was the most remarkable thing about E.S. Reddy. Be at it virtually all the time, and he remained intellectually productive right up to almost to the end of his life. He had pleasure in, he wouldn't like to hold on to something, and he shared with everybody. And if you sent him something, then you could be sure that it would be shared, of course, very discreetly with others who could also then look further. So it was a man who was pursuing knowledge, and was pursuing knowledge for the sake of advancing amity between peoples. And I think it is an unforgettable contribution, and I hope that more and more will be done on E.S.Reddy's work, and that somebody will compile all his writings together, because that will be a great contribution to both India and to Africa. Thank you.
All right. We're just checking, is Minister Mtembu, has he logged on? If he has, then we can bring him on for his message and tribute. Minister Jackson Mtembu, are you on? No, it doesn't look like it. All right, so then I'm going to invite Mina Reddy, who's the eldest daughter of the late E.S. Reddy, an academic in her own right, an activist in her own right. So Mina, over to you. And may I also just indicate that very sadly, Ila Gandhi's nephew has just passed away and she's had to rush off. So I'll be doing the vote of thanks at the end of the proceedings. Mina, over to you.
Thank you. On behalf of the family, I'd like to express our deep and heartfelt appreciation for all the tributes in honor of my father, all the messages, cards, newspaper articles, and other statements. We're so grateful to Ela Gandhi and to you, Ismail Vadi, for organizing today's memorial, and the Gandhi Development Trust and the Katrada Foundation, and to everyone else for your participation. I'm overwhelmed at the presence of so many of you, my extended family, my childhood friends, scholars, diplomats from all over the world, and people from all phases of his life. And it was so touching to hear all of your thoughts and memories as you spoke. I'm going to speak from a personal perspective. First, I would like to say that while my father worked tirelessly all his life on the causes that were so important to him, this was never at the expense of his family, and not just his immediate family, but the large and growing extended family from India and then from Turkey through my mother and on with each generation. As my nephew Neil said, he was to many an inspirational figure who fought for justice for those who were oppressed by systemic institutionalized racism. To me, his grandson, he was also a loving, kind, and calm presence who it was always a pleasure to be around. My father was an extremely generous person. He supported us in whatever we wanted to do with never a hint of judgment or criticism. Although he indirectly inspired some of us to work towards justice, he never tried to mold or influence his family members, but instead found out what we were interested in and figured out to help. If there was a budding artist in the family, he would find art books or art materials. Since I was an educator, he sent me materials about education. And when I became a climate change activist, he sent me relevant articles. He did the same for many people within and outside the family. He was a scholar, researcher for all he encountered. And as my son Manuel said, he wasn't a big sports fan, but knowing that I was, he congratulated me whenever any of the Boston teams won a championship. He wasn't a gamer, but he knew my brother and I liked games, so he bought many computer games for us. He bought us a video camera, and we became amateur filmmakers for a while. My father adored all the children of the extended family and gravitated towards them on any visit. He wrote them grandpa stories about his life growing up in a village in India. He was blessed to know 3 great-grandchildren and to spend time with all of them, even though they lived far away. He always found ways to entertain children of all ages. My mother was enormously important to my father. She made sure he ate nutritious food, persuaded him to go out for walks or to movies or museums to broaden his horizons, and kept him in touch with a wide spectrum of news from around the world. For his part, he researched her areas of interest and provided her materials, arranged for some of her writings to be published, and typed all of her work, whether it was her translations or her emails. She said it was fitting because when they were graduate students together, he helped by typing her papers. My father was also known among my friends and family for a wry sense of humor and for his storytelling. In New York and later in Cambridge, he and my mother received many visitors, both family and friends. He entertained my friends with interesting objects he has picked up around the world or around the corner. My father was always learning. When he retired, he delved into email and the internet. He used it to learn, but also to connect other people to each other and to ideas. His computer desktop was filled with articles he planned to read or reread. He recognized everyone's birthdays and played a major role in keeping the family connected. How could he do all that he did? In addition to his personality that many of you have referenced, he had a phenomenal memory and remarkable powers of concentration. I was always amazed at how he could focus even in the midst of pandemonium. In his last months, when the pandemic prevented in-person visits, my father continued to enjoy video chats with family members from around the world from ages 2 to 92. He also enjoyed listening to some of his favorite music, especially Paul Robeson and Pete Seeger. And he asked me to read him the New York Times every morning and to do the weekly news quiz with him. True to his nature, he never complained and was a model for us in the way he met his end with generosity, grace, and peace. Thank you again for this moving event. I'm confident his legacy will live on. Thank you again for this moving event. I'm confident his legacy will live on.
Mina, thank you very much. I'm just checking, Dawood or Dilani, were we able to get hold of Minister Jackson Mthembu? No? All right, then I think then look, we've come to the end of our proceedings. First of all, we'd like to just express our condolences to the Gandhi family. We don't know what circumstances are at the moment, but as I had indicated, Ila had to leave quite hurriedly and urgently. So it does look like it's something serious. So it's our condolences to the family, and we hope that all things go well over the next day or so. From our side, on behalf of the Ambedkar Foundation and the Gandhi Development Trust, we'd like to, most sincerely thank the Reddy family for giving us permission to host this particular memorial meeting. I mean, you've been open-hearted and you've been wonderful participants, and thank you very much for the beautiful messages and tributes that you've passed. To all of the people who are on the program here, both on Zoom and also on Facebook, thank you very much for joining us. It's really appreciated. Here was a man that I think, we have to honor. It's our duty now, particularly as South Africans, to honor his legacy, to honor him for the great work that he did in solidarity with our people and our liberation movement. Our sincerest thanks go out to all the speakers. I know over the last 2 or 3 days, Yunus Chamda has been hounding you, forcing you to get all your messages recorded, etc. Thank you so much. We do apologize for the bad connectivity in certain instances, but I think the message came through quite clearly. There might not have been a clear, coordination between the visuals and the words that's spoken, but the message has come through. So thank you very much for the time that you've taken to give us your messages today. We will miss, yes, there's no doubt about it. He has left a lasting legacy in our country, in the developing world, but even globally. And all of us, his friends, his family, his comrades, even the diplomatic circles, we can all be proud of the great and enormous work that he had done over 7 decades almost. For that, I think we are humbled by this great contribution that this man has made. And we hope, so many speakers have said that a worthy tribute will be a full-scale or full-length biography on Mr. E.S. Reddy. I hope that some academic somewhere in the world will take up this challenge and prepare this, because, I mean, we've got published and unpublished manuscripts that he left with us when he first came to South Africa in 1991. It's remarkable. And the numbers of letters he's written to people everywhere in the world. I just wonder, how did he have the time? I mean, an email today is so easy. But in the older days or in earlier days, to get that letter, to get it posted, to reply to correspondence, etc., that's phenomenal. Here you see the greatness of the man, that any simple note that somebody would have sent him, he would take the time and the effort to reply or to respond to that. So we hope that a book will be prepared in his honor, and also just recording the great work that he had done. So to all of you, we want to thank you. You are in different parts of the world. It might be good night for some of you. It might be a good day for you. But in South Africa, it's almost evening. So good evening to everybody else. And thank you for joining us. This has really been a wonderful and a very touching and moving tribute to a really great man and truly great man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ismail. Thanks, Katara Foundation and Gandhi Trust. Thanks, Ismail. Thanks, Katara Foundation and Gandhi Trust.
Thank you, Ismail. Thank you, Ismail.
Okay, I see people are putting on messages. That's wonderful. Am I correct that was recorded on Facebook? So if anybody has missed it, I'm sure that you could get to the AKF page on Facebook and just look at it again, or direct other people who, for some reason or the other, might not have made it to this memorial, proceedings, so they can actually view it at their leisure later on. Yes, I see it has been recording, so you should be able to pick it up on the Katwada Foundation page.
And thank you for a good job, Dr. Ismail Vadi. Always.
Thank you, Nadas. Thanks very much, Naj.
We can
I
count
see
on you.
people are still putting on messages, so I'm not going to leave the meeting. Ordinarily, I would have been gone already by now.
See, the host remains last.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the positive messages. And I mean, I think we are sure he's touched every one of us in many different ways.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nokwe.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you. All the way from Mauritius.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you also. Well done. I hope it will be recorded and it forms part of the, the work that you're talking for his legacy.
Sure. I see on the screen that it is recording still, so it looks like the IT people have done that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Ismail ji.
Yes, who's speaking? Is it Anuda?
My name is Prasad from India. I had the personal honor of meeting Dr. E.S. Reddy way back in 2004 at his home in New York. And he guided me to a number of Gandhi sources across the United States that I went and met many people, many organizations. And last year we organized a Gandhi King conference at Stanford University, and Ila Gandhi was our chief guest, and also Raj Mohan Gandhi. So two people from the Gandhi family, two from King family, two from Cesar Chavez family participated. Then I was also in Durban when E.S. Reddy ji was there some 10 years ago. So the Gandhi Development Trust organized a wonderful event.
Yes.
I attended that. And I was in South Africa last year also. So I was speaking at the 7th June function at Peter Marisburg. Then we have sent 8 people to South Africa July last year to participate in the Gandhi Mandela Youth Symposium. It's a great pleasure to hear about Dr. E.S. Reddy. I personally knew him, and he belongs to Nellore in Andhra Pradesh in India. And he was asking me that I should participate and develop the Pinakani Satyagraha Ashram, which was started or inaugurated by Mahatma Gandhi in 1921. And in a humble way, I was able to join the team there and work. And today it is vibrating with a lot of activities. That is my humble impression. And South Africa is a great model for us. because I believe that there is no Gandhi without South Africa. That's how I feel.
Yeah. Look, I hope that all the people who are still listening, please keep in touch with us. I mean, we are on all the social media platforms as the Katrada Foundation, and of course, the Gandhi Development Trust. I hope that now that ES is no more with us, the context and the connectivity doesn't break down. Please keep in touch. We would want to, continue with his work and keep us posted on the research, on the latest research that might be out. I think it will benefit all of our organizations in the country. So all the scholars, all the academics who have been part of this process, please keep in contact with us. We really appreciate it. Also, I see some of the ambassadors and excellencies that are on the program today, and also, as participants, please keep in touch. And should you wish to, you might want to just send an email or a note on your experiences with the late Mr. E.S. Reddy, and we'll certainly, put it onto our website so that other people can have the benefit of that also. Yes. All right. I think thank you very much to everybody. We're going to call it a day now, and God bless, and please keep in touch with us. Thank you very much, and take care. God bless, and please keep in touch with us. Thank you very much, and take care.